We talked about one English gang. The other English gang we're going to talk about was called the Firm. Now, in England, a firm is used to describe any organized crime group originating in the UK. The most famous of these firms is The Firm, which you may be familiar with if you've seen the movie Legend starring Tom Hardy. The Firm, like most crime syndicates in England, began on London's East End. It was established by twin brothers Ronnie and Reggie Ronnie and Reggie Kray. Now, the Kray twins were wild boys. Absolute madmen. I'm not saying this to be funny. These motherfuckers were crazy. There's a reason they were called Kray. Listen to this. In 1952, they were conscripted to the British Army, because back then, every 18-year-old British man had to serve in the military for 18 months. Anyways, they left immediately as soon as they arrived on base. When a corporal tried to stop them, Ronnie Kray punched him in the face, and they went back home and were arrested and taken back to the base the next day. A few months later, they went AWOL again, beat up a policeman who tried to arrest them. After a while, they were sent to a military prison where they caused an absolute ruckus. They were throwing poo-poo at guards, they were assaulting people, they were lighting their beds on fire, they even handcuffed a guard to the bars of their jail cell. They were such a handful that they had to be transferred to a regular civilian prison. And when the Krays got out of prison, they started setting up protection rackets around the East End and were so successful that they were eventually able to purchase a nightclub called Esmeralda's Born. That doesn't sound too luxurious, but this place was popping off. Anyone was going to Esmeralda's, including Frank Sinatra, Peter Sellers, and Judy Garland. Now, I realize some of you may not know who these people are since it was a long time ago, but that's the equivalent to Drake, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Scarlett Johansson showing up to your club. So these guys were a big deal. Anyways, they used their club along with multiple horse racing tracks to launder their money, and it was a lot of money. You gotta understand, at this time the Firm was like the Amazon of crime. Nothing happened in London without the Kray brothers knowing. But you know what they say, the only way out of that life is in a jail cell or a body bag. And after a string of sloppy murders and a lengthy investigation, the Krays were finally arrested and convicted of murder. They both received life in prison. Chung Ching Yi. Bro, I know this is super fucked up, but this sounds like one of the names we used in 3rd grade to make fun of Chinese people. I'm sorry, Chinese people. Anyways, Chung Ching Yi, also known as the Joe Boys, was a gang founded in San Francisco by young Chinese Americans. The name Joe Boys comes from the group's leader, Joe Fong. Now, Joe Fong was originally a member of the Hua Qing gang, which ran a protection and illegal gambling rackets in Chinatown. A few years after its founding, the Hua Qing merged with the Hop Sing, and the Yao Lang split from the Hua Qing, forming its own gang. Joe Fong then split off from the Yao Lei and formed the Chung Ching Yi. Then the Chung Ching Yi went to war with the Hua Qing. Did any of that make sense? Anyways, it doesn't matter. All you need to know is that the war between the Chung Ching Yi and the Hua Qing resulted in the deaths of 13 gang members and a life imprisonment for Joe Fong. After Fong's incarceration, the war continued until the Golden Dawn Massacre of 1977. Basically, the Joe Boys, as they were now known, tried to whack the leaders of the Hua Qing who were having dinner at the Golden Dragon restaurant, but they completely fucked up and ended up killing 5 civilians and injuring 11 others. After this event, the Joe Boys were basically shut down by law enforcement, and the Hua Qings ended up taking full control over Chinatown. 14K. The 14K triad is the second largest triad group in the world, the first being Sun Yee-on, which I mentioned earlier. 14K specializes in drug trafficking. Most of the opium and heroin coming out of Southeast Asia is coming from these guys. In fact, they work directly with the Sinaloa cartel, and they have branches all over the world, from New Zealand to Ireland to South Africa. Oh man, this one is an absolute nightmare to pronounce. Solnsevskaya Bratva. Solnsevskaya Bratva, whatever, close enough, is a crime syndicate originating in Russia. It's one of the biggest crime syndicates in the world, and they got their start in the 1980s and grew more powerful after the fall of communism left a vacuum for criminal enterprise. The group's founder, Sergei Mikhailov, initially ran a protection racket and also controlled a large portion of the car import business in Moscow. I'm just going to call it the SB. As the SB began to gain power, the Chechen Mafia began to take notice. A brutal shootout between the two groups at a movie theater left 6 Chechens and 4 Russians dead. Other than that, there's not a lot of information information I could find about these guys, other than they have a pretty big presence in Atlanta, Georgia, somehow. I don't know. They're apparently one of the biggest gangs, if not the biggest organized crime group in Atlanta. And according to WikiLeaks, they're also still active in Moscow. The Westies were basically the Irish mob. They operated out of New York, specifically Hell's Kitchen neighborhood in Manhattan. The Westies were much smaller than other organized crime gangs, having no more than 20 members at one time. Despite their low numbers, these